Mist and rust. The rain in Iron Bay always tasted like rust. It was the 5th year of my blindness, and the 5th year I'd been living in the basement of Elena Vance's house. For a blind man, this weather was the worst. The humidity was so thick it muffled sound, like being wrapped in a wet wool blanket. As for the smell, it was a disaster. The rot rising from the sewers, the moldy dust of the peeling walls, and the acidic scent of anxiety radiating from everyone deprived of sunlight. It was all amplified infinitely. I felt my way to the stove. I couldn't see, but I knew the position of the clay pot. My fingertips were covered in thick calluses, developed over the last 2 years from reading Braille and grinding my knuckles against rough walls to keep my combat edge. 3 inches left is the salt, 2 inches right is the dried orange peel. I recited the layout in my mind, moving with the precision of a mechanical arm. As long as my hand didn't shake. Unfortunately, today was an exception. It was likely the footsteps outside, the distinct sound of custom tactical boots hitting the waterlogged pavement. The friction of the rubber soles against the ground was 0, 5 seconds faster than usual. She was back, and she was in a bad mood. My hand trembled, and scalding broth splashed onto the back of my hand. HSS. I gritted my teeth, keeping the noise down. This level of pain was nothing for someone who had broken 3 ribs in the tactical unit. But I flinched instinctively, knocking over the metal ladle. It hit the floor with a loud clang. The crisp sound was piercing in the silent basement. The door swung open. A scent mixed of men's cologne, not hers, cheap instant coffee, and the faint residue of gunpowder instantly diluted the aroma of the broth. It was Elena. "What are you doing?" Her voice was cold, colder than the rain outside. It was the authority of someone used to commanding from a high position, the only tone she had used with me for 5 years. I hid my scalded hand behind my back and forced a smile that I hoped looked gentle. The weather report said a heavy storm is coming tonight. Your stomach acts up in this weather. I made some herbal broth with dried orange peel to help you sleep. Silence. I couldn't hear any change in her breathing, only the ripping sound of Velcro as she unfastened her police utility belt. "I don't need it," she said, crisp and sharp. "Caleb, how many times have I told you? You are a blind man now, not the invincible tactical captain. You can't even take care of yourself. Can you stop causing trouble in this cramped space?" My smile froze, making me feel like a pathetic clown. "I was just trying to help." I tried to explain. "Help?" Elena scoffed, her footsteps approaching. I felt a wave of heat as she came close, her body heat, followed by the sound of the clay pot being lifted. Splash. The scalding broth, the result of 2 hours of my effort, was dumped directly into the trash can. In that moment, I felt it wasn't just broth being poured away, but the last shred of my dignity. I'm not hungry, and I don't eat things made by a cripple. It makes me feel like I'm giving you charity. She slammed the pot back onto the stove, not even glancing at the hand I held behind my back. "Clean this up. Don't let Leo see it. I don't want my child thinking his Uncle Caleb is just a nanny who circles the stove." With that, she turned and left. The sound of her high-heeled tactical boots climbing the stairs faded until the thud of the heavy security door on the first floor cut off that bright, shiny world. I stood there listening to the viscous broth sliding down the plastic liner of the trash can. Was that the sound of a heart breaking? No, just the physical phenomenon of starch gelatinization. I smiled self-deprecatingly, crouched down, and groped for the ladle. My fingertips touched the cold floor, then the scalding puddle. The burn on my hand began to sting fiercely, but I felt that the pain made me feel incredibly real. At least it proved I was still alive, living like a rat in this sunless basement. Cold Rain Elena leaned back on the sofa in the first-floor living room, rubbing her temples in exhaustion. The rain outside was getting heavier, drumming against the bulletproof glass with a dull thud. Iron Bay hadn't been peaceful lately. The Raymond case was like a boulder crushing everyone at the precinct. 3 victims in a row, all missing on rainy nights. 3 days later, their bodies would appear in some corner of the city, skin peeled clean off, like carefully processed works of art. Damn it. Elena looked at the messy files on the coffee table, the report just sent over by forensics. No fingerprints, no DNA, even the footprints had been washed clean by the rain. The killer was a ghost. "Mom, where's Uncle Caleb?" A young, tender voice interrupted her thoughts. 5-year-old Leo stood at the bedroom door, clutching a worn-out teddy bear and rubbing his sleepy eyes. He was the son of a fallen hero. In that tragic operation 5 years ago, his biological father, who was also Caleb's second-in-command, had been blown to pieces. Elena's heart softened. She walked over and picked the child up. "Uncle Caleb is resting in the basement. Don't disturb him. But I smell broth. It smells so good, Leo sniffed. Uncle Caleb makes the best food. Elena's expression stiffened for a second. She remembered the pot she had just dumped into the trash, and Caleb's hand trembling slightly behind his back. She had seen it. As a veteran detective, her observation skills were razor-sharp. She saw the angry red blister on Caleb's hand and the twitching muscle at the corner of his eye when he forced that smile. But she couldn't control her emotions. Whenever she saw Caleb's submissive, cautious demeanor, she remembered the ace of the tactical unit who had commanded with such confidence amidst a hail of bullets 5 years ago. The Caleb of that time was the light, everyone's faith. But this blind man now, he made her angry. Angry at his incompetence, and even more angry at herself for being powerless to stop it all. That's the smell of takeout. Elena lied, tucking Leo back into bed. Go to sleep. You have kindergarten tomorrow. After soothing the child, Elena returned to the living room. Her phone on the coffee table buzzed. It was a mass message from the department brass, or more accurately, a victory announcement. Warm welcome to FBI criminal psychology consultant Dr. Julian Reed returning to the country. A welcome gala will be held at the precinct tomorrow. The holographic data forensics system Dr. Reed brings will be the key to cracking the Raymond case. Attached was a photo. Julian was wearing a tailored suit, his eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses shining with confidence. Behind him was a massive screen scrolling with complex data streams. Elena stared at the photo with a complicated expression. 5 years ago, Julian was also a member of the task force. Back then, he was an inconspicuous technical consultant, always dimmed by Caleb's brilliance. Who would have thought the tables would turn so completely? Caleb had become a useless invalid, and Julian had become a savior. Data, Elena Muteret. She used to hate cold data. She believed in the intuition and field sense Caleb had taught her. But the disastrous failure 5 years ago made her completely reject the past. Intuition got her teammates killed. Only data didn't lie. She tossed the phone aside in irritation, her gaze landing on another cold case file. A locked room murder at Highland Park Estates last month. The victim died in his study, doors and windows locked from the inside. Key in the victim's pocket, no sign of a second person. Forensics ruled it a suicide, but the family refused to accept it and kept making noise. Elena had been staring at this file for 3 days with no leads. What would the old Caleb do? The thought popped up and she crushed it immediately. The current Caleb couldn't even walk straight. How could he solve the case? Just then, the door to the basement opened. Caleb felt his way up, holding a white cane. The tapping sound was light, as if he was afraid of disturbing her. What are you doing up here? Elena asked unkindly. Caleb stopped, tilting his head. His pitch-black sunglasses reflected the cold light of the room. I want a glass of water. His voice was calm. Also, I want to tell you something. Speak. Just now, through the vent, I smelled. Caleb pointed to the old ventilation duct in the corner of the living room that led straight to the basement. The file on your desk. The paper has a specific stale, moldy smell. It's from that batch of special supply paper the city mill made 20 years ago. Only old files kept in storage for a long time smell like that. If I'm not guessing wrong, you're looking at the Highland Park locked room case. Elena was stunned for a moment, then frowned. Your nose is better than a dog's. So what? Caleb ignored her mockery and continued. That case. I heard Leo read the news report to me. Data trap, the ventilation duct in the victim's study. It's only 4 inches wide, too small for a person, but have you checked the thickness of the dust inside the pipe? What do you mean? If I were the killer, I'd use a high-powered industrial vacuum cleaner through the vent. Utilizing the pressure difference, I could suck the deadbolt latch up from the outside to create the illusion of it being locked from the inside. Caleb gestured in the air as he spoke. The motor of that kind of vacuum has a high frequency. You can't hear it at the scene later, but if there's dust in the pipe, the distribution near the vent will show streamlined drag marks, not the even distribution of natural settling. Elena's heart skipped a beat. It was an incredibly sharp angle, but a second later, rationality and prejudice took over. Caleb, has your brain rotted from staying in the basement too long? Elena interrupted him coldly. Industrial vacuum? Do you know how much power that requires? And that vent has a grate. How would you operate it? The grate is removable. If the killer is a petite female, or... Enough! Elena stood up abruptly, slamming the file onto the table. This is a serious criminal investigation, not one of your detective novels. Don't let your delusions interfere with my judgment. Just stay being blind and stop trying to prove you're still the legendary detective from back then. You aren't him anymore. The air solidified. Caleb stood there, sunglasses hiding his eyes, making his emotions unreadable. After a long time, he nodded, the corner of his mouth pulling into a self-mocking arc. True, it's a bit of a stretch for me to see anything, considering I'm blind. He turned, fumbled to pour a glass of water, spilling some over his hand without reacting, and shuffled back to the basement step by step. His back looked as desolate as a withered leaf. Watching him leave, a wave of inexplicable irritation rose in Elena's chest. Driven by some ghost, she picked up the phone and dialed the duty officer at forensics. Hey, Lewis, go to the Highland Park crime scene. Check something for me. Yes, the dust distribution in the ventilation duct. Hanging up, Elena felt like she was crazy. She had actually listened to the nonsense of a blind man. The next afternoon, inside the City Precinct Detective Squad office. Captain Vance, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Lewis from forensics rushed in waving a report, forgetting to knock. Elena was organizing the security plan for the evening's welcome gala. She jumped, frowning. What's the panic? What's amazing? The Highland Park locked room case. Lewis slapped the report on the desk, pointing at the microscopic photos. We followed your instructions and did a trace element extraction and dust morphology analysis on the inner wall of the duct. Guess what? 30 centimeters from the opening, the dust showed clear radial drag marks. And we found trace amounts of machine oil, the kind that evaporates from high-power motors. Elena's hand jerked, the pen leaving a long ink streak on the paper. Are you sure? Her voice was dry. 100%. We simulated it. With a modified industrial vacuum and a flexible hose, you can absolutely manipulate an old-style slide bolt from outside the vent. Lewis looked at Elena with worship in his eyes. Captain, how did you think of that? It's textbook perfect crime scene analysis. Without this angle, we would have closed it as a suicide. Elena looked at the report, feeling every word slapping her across the face. This wasn't her idea. It was the idea of the blind man she called useless and locked in a basement. Just from a news snippet Leo read, plus a tiny deduction about dust logic. Caleb didn't see the scene, didn't see the file, didn't even see light. But he saw the truth. Captain, Lewis noticed her expression. Aren't you happy? No, I am. Elena took a deep breath, suppressing the complex emotions. File the report. Summon the victim's wife immediately. Focus on whether she has records of buying or renting high-power cleaning equipment. Yes, ma'am. Lewis ran off excitedly. Elena was left alone in the office. She slumped in her chair, looking at the gloomy sky outside. She won the case, but what had she lost? That evening after work, Elena took a detour to an import supermarket. She bought steaks Caleb used to like and a bottle of red wine. Even though she knew Caleb rarely drank now because alcohol affected his auditory judgment. Back home, the basement was pitch black. Caleb never turned on the lights to save electricity. It was all the same to him anyway. Elena stood at the door for a long time before walking down. Caleb. The sound of fabric rustling came from the dark. I'm here. His voice came from the corner, steady and quiet. Elena turned on the light. The sudden brightness made Caleb instinctively turn his head away. He was sitting on the shabby single bed, holding a piece of wood and a carving knife, seemingly working on something. The case is solved, Elena said with difficulty. The knife in Caleb's hand paused, which shavings fell. That's good, he said faintly. No request for credit, no blame. As if it were a trivial matter. This attitude made Elena feel worse. She would rather he jumped up and mocked her, saying, see, I told you I was right. But he didn't. He was used to being ignored, used to being misunderstood. This is for you. Elena pulled a gift card from her bag and placed it on the table covered in wood chips. There's $500 on it. Buy Leo some good food or buy yourself some decent clothes. Caleb turned toward the card. His eyes behind the sunglasses were lifeless, yet seemed to pierce through Elena's soul. Is this a bonus? He asked. Consider it. A consulting fee. Elena looked away awkwardly. Also, the chief named you for the gala tonight. He said since you're still an external consultant for the archives, people will talk if you don't show up. Actually, the chief hadn't mentioned Caleb at all. It was Julian Reed. On the phone, Julian had laughed. Heard old Caleb is living pretty rough? Bring him along. We're old war buddies. Let's catch up. Elena knew Julian had no good intentions, but she couldn't refuse. Julian was the department's new golden boy, the key to solving the Raymond case. I'm not going, Caleb refused flatly. I don't have suitable clothes, and I don't like loud places. You have to go. Elena's voice hardened, slipping into her habitual commanding tone. It's an order. Julian is back. He's the deputy leader of this task force. You are an advisor to the archives. If you're absent, Brass will think you have an attitude problem against the organization. I don't want trouble because of something petty like this. Caleb fell silent. After a long while, he put down the wood carving and the knife, the corner of his mouth hooking into a meaningful smile. Julian, so he's back. The voice was soft, light as a sigh, yet like a blade about to be unsheathed. Fine, I'll go. Light in darkness I am blind, but I am not deaf. The noise in the hotel banquet hall was a disaster for me. The high-frequency clink of champagne flutes, the sharp click of women's heels on marble, the hypocritical greetings of men, and the smell of hundreds of perfumes, sweat, alcohol, and food mixed together like a pot of boiling swill, constantly assaulting my brain. I stood in the shadows in the corner of the hall, wearing my washed-out old suit, gripping my white cane. This was my place. The glamorous crowd automatically formed a vacuum around me. Occasionally, someone passing by would quickly cover their nose and mouth, as if I carried some contagious virus. Well, isn't this our legendary detective, Caleb Stone? A magnetic voice, dripping with artificially constructed warmth, pierced through the noise. 5 years had passed, but I would recognize that voice even if it were burned to ash. Julian Reed, the man who cowered behind me 5 years ago, now standing in the spotlight. I smelled him. Custom Royal Oak Cologne. Top notes of citrus, middle notes of sandalwood. Expensive, but it couldn't mask the nauseating scent of hormones beneath his skin. Arrogance, pride, and the twisted pleasure of seeing me in this destitute state. Dr. Reed. I nodded slightly, not moving. A hand landed on my shoulder, heavy and provocative. Dr. Reed? Too formal. Call me Julian. Julian's voice was loud, instantly attracting the attention of the circle around us. All eyes focused here, like countless needles pricking my skin. Everyone. Julian raised his wine glass, announcing loudly. Let me introduce you. This is the legend of the Iron Bay Police Department, Caleb Stone, the former occupant of the position I hold now. If not for his sacrifice back then, how would I, Julian Reed, have this opportunity today? Low laughter rippled through the crowd. It was the mockery of a loser. Old Caleb, I heard you're living in Captain Vance's basement now. Julian leaned close to my ear, lowering his voice, his tone full of malice. How did you end up like this? If you need money, tell me. I just bought a villa. I need a security guard for the gate. The pay is definitely better than the archives. My fingers on the cane tightened, knuckles turning white. But I held back, because I knew Elena was nearby. I could smell her cold scent approaching. Julian, you've had too much to drink. Elena's voice cut in. Oh, Captain Vance is heartbroken. Julian laughed loudly, turning to grab a cup of hot coffee from a waiter's tray. Here, old Caleb, this is freshly brewed Blue Mountain. Wake yourself up. Don't always stand there with a stern face behind sunglasses. People might think you're here to collect a debt. He handed the coffee over. I reached out to take it. Just as my fingers were about to touch the cup, Julian's wrist twitched with extreme subtlety. The angle was calculated perfectly. Splash. The scalding brown liquid poured mostly over the back of my hand, with some splashing onto my white shirt, leaving an ugly stain. Oh, I let out a short cry of pain. My hand instantly blistered red. The cane slipped from my grip, clattering to the floor and rolling away. Oh my God, Caleb, why are you so careless? Julian shouted exaggeratedly, his face written with surprise and concern. He even pulled out a handkerchief as if to wipe me down. Can't even hold a cup steady? It seems this disability really does affect your life. The room went into an uproar. No one blamed Julian. Everyone was whispering, discussing the clumsiness and pathetic state of the blind man. At that moment, the pain was secondary. The shame of being stripped naked and exhibited to the crowd made me want to dig a hole and bury myself right there. I instinctively turned my head, seeking Elena's direction. Even though I knew she couldn't see my eyes, I was instinctively begging for help. You are the captain. You know my skills. You know that even if I'm blind, my hands are steady. You know Julian did this on purpose. You'll speak up for me, right? Enough. Elena's voice rang out. A spark of hope lit up in my heart. However, the next second, that hope was thoroughly extinguished. She didn't look at Julian. She walked up to me, her tone carrying that familiar frustration of iron failing to become steel. Stop embarrassing yourself here. She lowered her voice, every word a slap in the face. Dr. Reed kindly poured you coffee, and you can't even handle that? Look at yourself now. Where's there a single trace of a police officer? My world went completely silent in that moment. The laughter, Julian's fake apologies, the music, it all vanished. I could only hear the sound of my own heart beating. Once, twice, slow and heavy. So, in your eyes, I have fallen this low. Even the most basic trust no longer exists. I slowly crouched down, groping along the floor. The cane had rolled a bit far, just like the distance between her and me. Apologies, I found the cane and stood straight again, my face returning to that deadwater calm. I didn't tend to the blisters on my hand, nor did I wipe the stain on my shirt. I faced Julian's direction. Though I couldn't see, I could feel him smiling. Dr. Reed's technique is very professional, I said flatly. Tilt angle 45 degrees, wrist force applied for 0. 3 seconds. You must have practiced that move quite a few times. Julian's laughter cut off abruptly. Caleb, stop spouting nonsense. Elena scolded in a low voice. I'm not feeling well. I'm leaving. Ignored Elena. I turned, my cane tapping against the marble floor, making a crisp tap sound. I walked through the crowd, through the gazes of disdain and pity, like a lonely, proud, stray dog, walking out into the rainy night. The rain hit my face, bone-chillingly cold. But I felt that here, it was much cleaner than that warm banquet hall. I didn't know that shortly after I left, the big screen in the banquet hall suddenly lit up. Breaking news. The Raymond strikes again. A fourth victim has appeared on the west side. And as that news broadcasted, I stood in the rain, taking a deep breath. In the air, besides the smell of rain, I smelled a faint scent of sulfur, drifting up from the sewers. It was the smell of sin. Scent of sulfur. Iron Bay had gone completely mad. The Raymond's fourth murder announcement was like a drop of water falling into a pan of boiling oil. The neon lights of the whole city seemed to tremble, and the center of that trembling was Julian Reed. He started a citywide live stream from the command center of the city precinct. This would have been unimaginable before, but to quell the panic and to build a hero narrative, the brass allowed this insanity. I sat on the old sofa in the living room, fingering a half-finished piece of wood. The TV volume was turned up loud. Leo was lying on the carpet, staring at the glamorous man on the screen. Citizens, please rest assured. Julian's voice came through the speakers, carrying an intoxicating confidence. Our holographic crime map has locked onto the killer's high-frequency activity zone. Big data doesn't lie. Tonight, in this storm, we will end this nightmare. Complex red dots and lines jumped across the screen, looking incredibly high-tech. Wow, that uncle is so cool, Leo exclaimed, biting his finger, not really understanding but impressed. I didn't speak. I just tilted my head slightly, my nostrils flaring. The window wasn't closed tight, and the damp wind poured in. Besides the smell of mud, that faint, elusive smell of sulfur was becoming stronger, mixed with the volatile scent of some acidic chemical. Wrong, I muttered subconsciously. What's wrong, Uncle Caleb? Leo looked up and asked. The wind direction is wrong, and the smell is wrong. I pointed to the pitch-black night sky outside the window. The area Julian locked onto is the East Side Wetlands Reserve. That's upwind, but this sulfur smell is drifting from the west side. That smell is very specific. Only old carbon disulfide scrubbers leak like that when the air pressure is extremely low. That's the smell of the abandoned chemical plant on the west side. Leo blinked his big eyes. He didn't understand the science, but he trusted me unconditionally. Just then, on the TV, Julian opened a hotline segment to show his connection with the people. All right, let's hear from this lucky concerned citizen. I don't know how Leo did it. Maybe the tablet was connected to the live stream, but the kid actually hit the connect button. Hello, little friend. Julian's surprised voice came through. Uncle, you're looking in the wrong place. Leo shouted clearly into the tablet. Uncle Caleb says the bad smell is coming from the west, from the chemical plant, not the park. The live stream went silent for a second. Then Julian's signature chuckle came out, thick with mockery. Oh, Uncle Caleb? Is that the former tactical captain living in the basement? It seems our martyr's orphan has been led astray by some charlatan, solving crimes by sniffing the air instead of using science now. The comments section exploded. Haha, dying of laughter. A blind man solving crimes by smell. Clout chasing? Disgusting. Using a kid. Dr. Reed trusts big data. We trust Dr. Reed. Bow. The front door was shoved open. Elena stood in the doorway, her face ashen. She had obviously heard the broadcast on her way back to the precinct or seen the messages in the group chat. She was soaked, water dripping from her hair onto the floor, but I didn't feel the cold, only a fire of impending rage. Elena, listen to me, that smell. I stood up trying to explain. Shut up. Elena rushed over and snatched the tablet from Leo's hands. It was the first time in years she looked at me with a gaze bordering on hatred. Caleb, are you crazy? It's fine if you live like a ghost, but why drag Leo into this? Making a fool of him in front of the whole city? Let him be mocked at school for having a charlatan uncle? Is this how you take care of a fallen comrade's child? I didn't tell him to say it, but Julian's judgment is wrong. I got desperate, raising my voice. The East Side Park is wetlands. The echo on a rainy night is dull. A killer who seeks ritual-like, that needs an open execution ground with an echo. Plus that sulfur smell. It has to be the West Side chemical plant. Sulfur smell? I think it's the mold inside your brain. Elena pointed at my nose, her finger almost poking my sunglasses. Julian's model ran for 3 days and nights, colliding billions of data points. What do you have? A nose that's been blind for 5 years? Or your pathetic pride? She grabbed my white cane resting by the sofa. What are you doing? Panic rose in my chest. I reached out to grab it, but grasped only air. Since you like staying in the dark imagining things, then stay there thoroughly. Elena dragged me, shoving me all the way to the basement door. I stumbled, the burn on my hand hitting the door frame, screaming with pain. Get in. Don't come out until I figure out what to do with you. Elena, you'll regret this. It's a human life. I clawed at the door frame, screaming. West Side Chemical Plant. To send a patrol car to check. I beg you. Bang. My answer was the heavy sound of the door closing and the click of the lock turning, followed by the sound of the key being pulled out. Mommy, don't lock, Uncle Caleb. Leo's crying voice sounded outside. Go to your room. You're not allowed to listen to him anymore. Footsteps faded away. I slumped on the cold concrete floor, my hands empty. My cane was taken. For a blind man, that was equivalent to having my legs broken. But I couldn't care about that. I pressed my face against the crack of the door, inhaling desperately. The sulfur smell was getting stronger. It was even mixed with a trace of the rust-like scent of blood. Sounds of despair. The basement was deadly silent, save for the wind whistling through the ventilation duct like the whimpering of a beast. Without my cane, I could only crawl back to the bed like some mollusk. Time passed second by second. I couldn't hear a clock, but I could judge the time by the changes in the rain outside. It was probably around 9:00 p.m. The storm was torrential. To ordinary people, a rainy night is just the noise of rain. But to me, the sound of rain is the paint that constructs the world. Rain hitting mud is a thud. Hitting metal is a clink. Hitting puddles is a splash. I closed my eyes, the auditory center of my brain working furiously, trying to penetrate the thick concrete slab to capture sounds miles away. Too far. Even with my hyper-hearing, I couldn't cross half the city to monitor a crime scene. But I could smell. That scent drilled into my nose through the vent like a venomous snake. The sulfur smell had faded, replaced by the smell of ether. Anesthetic. No. I clutched my head in agony, fingernails digging into my scalp. He was making his move, right there on the west side. And on the other side of the city, at the east side wetlands, Julian was leading a massive police force, even media vans, casting a giant net. I could imagine the scene. Julian talking confidently to the cameras, Elena fully armed leading strike team, everyone waiting for a victory, not knowing they were exposing their backs to the devil. Let me out. Elena, pick up the phone. I fumbled for my old Nokia. Smartphones were inconvenient for me, and dialed Elena's number from muscle memory. Sorry, the subscriber you dialed is powered off. Right? In such a major operation, how could she keep it on? I dialed 911 dispatch. Hello, Iron Bay Police Department. This is Caleb Stone, badge number 0527. Former badge 0527. I want to report a crime. The Raymond is at the West Side Chemical Plant. Send someone quickly. Caleb Stone. The dispatcher clearly knew the name, her tone turning odd. Is this Captain Vance's? Mr. Stone? Sir, please do not occupy the emergency line. We are watching DR. Reed's live stream. The operation is going smoothly. Please do not cause trouble. Beep. Beep. The line went dead. I smashed the phone against the wall. It shattered, the battery popping out, making one last crisp sound in the dark space. Despair. It drowned me like a tide. I curled up in the corner, hugging my knees, just like that night 5 years ago. Back then, I was like this too, screaming into the radio for backup, screaming that the intel was wrong, that it was a trap. But no one believed me. In the end, the bomb went off. My eyes were gone, and my deputy, Leo's dad, was in pieces. History is always strikingly similar. Only this time, even the last shred of dignity was stripped away. I don't know how long passed. A faint, extremely weak scream came through the vent. The sound was torn to shreds by the wind and rain. If you didn't listen carefully, you couldn't distinguish it at all. But I heard it. It was the high-frequency sound of vocal cords spasming in extreme terror. It was over. That girl was dead. All the strength in my body was drained in that instant. 2 lines of liquid flowed from the corners of my eyes. I didn't know if they were tears or blood from where I bumped my forehead earlier. I just felt cold, a cold that seeped out from the cracks in my bones. Wrong judgment. East Side Wetlands Reserve. Beams from powerful tactical flashlights cut the curtain of rain into pieces. Team A in position. Team B in position. Snipers ready. Elena gripped her gun, her palms slick with sweat. She stared intently at the dense thicket ahead, the optimal body dumping site predicted by Julian's big data model. Move! With Julian's command, dozens of SWAT officers charged in like tigers descending a mountain. Flashbangs went off, white light piercing the darkness. However, there were no screams, no resistance. Not even a shadow. Only a startled stray cat screeching as it darted up a tree. An empty pavilion. An empty lawn. The rain ruthlessly mocked this group of fully armed elites. The confidence on Julian's face froze. He looked at the tablet in his hand in disbelief. Impossible. Trajectory overlap 98%. Psychological profile perfectly matches. How can there be no one? DR. Reed, is it a mistake? A SWAT team leader wiped rain from his face, his tone dissatisfied. Impossible. Someone must have leaked the info. Julian shouted in exasperation. Did the killer see the live stream just now? Just then, the urgent call from the command center came through Elena's earpiece. Captain Vance, we received a report. A female body has been found at the west side. The abandoned chemical plant. Boom! A thunderclap exploded. In that instant, she felt the world spin. West side, chemical plant. These words hit her chest like a sledgehammer. Hours ago, the blind man she had locked in the basement, whose cane she had taken, had screamed exactly this place. The victim. Is the identity confirmed? Elena's voice trembled. Confirmed. It's a missing college student. Time of death estimated 30 minutes ago. If we had gone earlier, even 20 minutes earlier. The voice from command faded. Elena's gun hung limply at her side. She turned to look at Julian. Julian had turned off the live stream. His face was pale as he roared into his phone. What do you mean, data deviation? I want a perfect result. Figure out a PR angle. Say the killer is cunning and used counter-reconnaissance. At this moment, the glamorous detective looked so ugly in the rain. But what floated in Elena's mind was Caleb's desperate, pale face in the darkness. The man she called a madman and a charlatan. The man fighting alone in the dark with just his nose and ears. He was right. He was right again. And she had personally strangled the only hope. Withdraw. Elena felt the word was squeezed out of her throat, coated in blood. Valstrai, 00 a.m. Elena returned home. She didn't change clothes. Her soaked uniform clung to her body, bone-chillingly cold. But she felt nothing. The living room was a mess. Leo's tablet was still on the floor. She walked step by step to the basement door, her hands shaking as she pulled out the key. This key, hours ago, was a symbol of her authority. Now, it was evidence of her sin. Click. The door opened. A smell of mildew rushed out. By the weak light from the living room, she saw Caleb curled up in the corner. He hugged his knees, head buried in his arms. The white shirt stained with coffee was now smudged gray and black from the floor. Next to him was the corpse of the smashed Nokia. Hearing the door, Caleb didn't move. Even his breathing rhythm didn't change. Caleb. Elena's voice was hoarse. Caleb finally moved. He slowly lifted his head. His sunglasses were gone, lost somewhere, revealing those gray-white, lifeless, bloodshot eyes. There was a bruise on his forehead, probably from hitting the door earlier. Is she dead? His voice was light like shattered glass. Elena's heart convulsed violently. She wanted to explain, to apologize, to say Julian's data misled everyone, to say she had no choice but to trust science. But all the words turned into a pale, powerless defense. We did our best. Caleb laughed. The sound was dry and grating. Did your best? Did your best putting on a show in the park? Or did your best locking me in here? He stood up slowly, supporting himself against the wall. His legs were numb from curling up so long, but he refused the hand Elena reached out. Where's my cane? He asked. Elena turned frantically, grabbing the cane from the door and handing it to him. Here. Caleb, I'm sorry. I was too anxious. You thought I was going crazy. You thought I wanted to hurt Leo. Caleb took the cane, his fingers tracing the familiar texture. Elena, in your heart, I'm just that kind of rotten person, right? No, Forget it. Caleb interrupted her. The grief and indignation on his face suddenly vanished, replaced by a dead silence that made one's heart panic. like a pool of water frozen solid, never to ripple again. That girl died during your live stream, and died in my ears. Caleb put on his sunglasses, covering those hollow eyes. I'm tired, Captain Vance. Since you say I'm not fit to be a cop, and not fit to teach Leo, then from today on, I'll just be a real blind man. I won't listen, I won't smell, I won't ask. You all investigate how you want, perform how you want. He turned and walked to the shabby bed, lying down with his back to Elena, pulling the moldy blanket over his head. Close the door gently. Don't wake Leo. Elena stood at the door, looking at the back that lay there like a corpse. Tears finally burst from her eyes. She knew some things, once broken, could never be put back together. The rain outside was still falling, but in this moment, Caleb had built a high wall in his heart. A wall she could never climb over again. Bait planned for the next 3 days. The air in Iron Bay seemed to solidify. The death of the college student was a slap in the face to the police. Public opinion was in an uproar. Although PR tried desperately to push the blame onto the cunning killer and force majeure, cracks appeared in Julian's God Cop halo. Inside the precinct conference room, smoke filled the air. The dark circles under Julian's eyes were visible even behind his gold-rimmed glasses. He tugged his tie irritably, pointing at the new model on the big screen. After correction, we've locked onto the killer's final hideout, the abandoned container terminal. This time, it won't be wrong. Dr. Reed, an old detective, couldn't help but speak up. Last time at the chemical plant. Last time was an accident. Julian slammed the table, his eyes dark. This time, to ensure success, we need comprehensive sensory support. I propose initiating the bait plan. Everyone looked at him. Julian pushed up his glasses, his gaze landing on Elena, who had been silent. Captain Vance, the killer, is a paranoid perfectionist. He has a pathological desire to destroy broken things. We need a bait, a disabled person who is familiar with police operations but appears harmless, to lure the snake out of the hole. Elena looked up sharply, her pupils constricting. You want to send Caleb? Not to send him to die, but to cooperate. Julian's voice returned to that fake gentleness. The terrain there is complex, the containers are like a maze, and it's storming tonight. Caleb's hearing is a natural radar in that environment. Captain, this is to catch the killer, to stop more girls from being killed. You wouldn't disregard the greater good for personal feelings, would you? Moral Blackmal. It was Julian's best trick. Elena clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. She wanted to refuse, to say Caleb was already in that state, don't torture him anymore. But the image of the dead girl's pale face flashed in her mind, along with the pressure from the brass. I'll ask him. Elena's voice was as quiet as a mosquito. That night, Elena returned to the basement. Caleb was sharpening his carving knife, the ZZZTZZT sound echoing in the dim space. Caleb, Elena stood behind him, speaking with difficulty. There's an operation. We need your help. Just this once. Once we catch the Raymond, I'll apply to the department to restore your badge, send you to the best eye clinic. The grinding stopped. Caleb didn't turn around. He just blew gently, clearing the wood dust from the blade. You want me to be the bait? Elena Stefanet. Julian said. Don't mention that name. Caleb interrupted her, his tone terrifyingly calm. I'll go. Caleb, if you don't want to. I'm going. Not for you, and not for that man named Reed. Caleb stood up, folded the knife into his sleeve, and picked up the cane from the corner. That killer has a smell I hate. I want to personally wipe that smell from Iron Bay. He put on his sunglasses and turned to face Elena. It was a sense of detachment, purely business. Let's go, Captain Vance. Don't keep your detective waiting. Hunter in the dark, the abandoned docks. The rain here was heavier than in the city. The sea wind carried the smell of salt and rust, howling through thousands of shipping containers like ghosts and wolves. I was positioned on the side of a command vehicle. No bulletproof vest. Julian said it would alert the killer. Hilarious. A blind man is the best target. Did we really need to act? Julian's voice came through the earpiece from the comfort of the command center miles away. All units. Thermal imaging shows the target near the red containers in Zone A. Captain Vance, lead the breach from the front. Caleb, you go towards Zone B. Make some noise. Zone B. I stood in the rain, not moving immediately. The rain tapping on surrounding objects built a gray 3D map in my mind through endless echoes. 50 meters to the left, a pile of hollow metal pipes, crisp ringing. 30 meters to the right, stacked containers 3 high blocking the wind. And in the farther Zone C, from the direction of a towering crane control cab, came an extremely faint, extremely rhythmic sound. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Human breathing. Low frequency, slow heart rate. A trained fighter or a psychopath with nerves of steel. But in Zone B, where Julian wanted me to go, I heard a different sound. Tick, tock. The sound of a mechanical clock hand, accompanied by a faint electric buzz. A bomb. Stop. I pressed the headset, shouting, Elena, don't go to Zone A, it's empty. Zone B has a bomb. The killer is on the crane in Zone C. The earpiece was silent for a second. Then came Julian's exasperated roar. Caleb, what are you trying to pull now? My thermal imaging shows no one in Zone C. Are you trying to get everyone killed? Follow orders. Move to Zone B. The thermals missed him because he's wearing an insulated suit. My veins popped with urgency, rain filling my mouth. Elena, trust me this once. Just once. Ich heard Elena's rapid breathing. She was hesitating. Just then, a hand grabbed my arm hard. It was the young officer assigned to guard me, a die-hard fan of Julian. Mr. Consultant, don't move. Dr. Reed said if you don't cooperate, I have to cuff you to the car, so you don't ruin things. Let go of me. I tried to struggle, but the officer pulled out handcuffs and locked my left hand to the bumper of the police cruiser. Captain Vance, breach Zone A. Julian gave the death order over the channel. Copy. Move. Elena finally chose the cold data. In that moment, I felt the blood in my body turn to ice. I stopped struggling. I just leaned quietly against the wheel, listening to the rushing footsteps charging toward the empty trap. 3, 2, 1. I counted down in my heart. This countdown was timing despair. Breakout boom. Just as the assault team crossed the edge of Zone B, a massive fireball shot into the sky. It wasn't in the core of Zone B where I was sent, but in the corridor connecting Zone A and B. The shockwave, laced with shrapnel from the containers, swept across the area. Take cover. Elena was thrown to the ground by the blast, ears ringing, vision red. She saw 2 officers ahead blown away, blood staining the puddles. Is this your data? Elena lay in the mud, screaming hysterically into her mic. In a command room, Julian watched the vital signs on the screen vanish instantly. His face went pale, and the coffee cup in his hand shattered on the floor. It was over. It was all over. On the perimeter of the docks, Caleb, handcuffed to the cruiser, had no expression on his face when the explosion hit. He stood like a statue, washed by rain. Watching the distant fire, listening to Elena's painful coughing, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. That was the last time his heart would ache for this so-called team. Never again. Crack, a sound that would make one's teeth ache. The young officer looked at Caleb in horror. Caleb, face blank, gripped his own left thumb with his right hand and snapped it backward. The thumb dislocated instantly, hanging limp. Then, using the blood and rain as lubricant, he dragged his left hand out of the narrow metal ring. Skin tore, bone showed, but he acted like he felt no pain. Mr. Consultant, the officer stammered. What are you doing? Caleb ignored him. He bent down to pick up the cane from the ground, then slid the sharp carving knife from his sleeve into his palm. He turned his head. Even through the sunglasses, the officer felt he was being stared at by a bloodthirsty beast. Tell Julian. Caleb's voice was exceptionally clear amidst the thunder. His game is over. Now it's my turn. With that, he pressed his dislocated thumb against the car door. Click, and popped it back into place. Then, without looking back, he charged into the dark curtain of rain toward the ignored Zone C. Tower Showdown Zone C, the crane tower. There were no lights here, only the occasional flash of lightning tearing across the sky. For normal people, this was hell. For me, this was home court. I climbed the metal ladder silently. The wind was fierce, making the crane sway slightly, but I could feel the frequency of every vibration. 50 meters up, the breathing I heard earlier was directly above, growing more rapid. The killer evidently hadn't expected that after blowing the police to hell, a blind man would infiltrate his nest. I flipped onto the control cab platform. It was an enclosed space with excellent acoustics. Who is it? A raspy voice called out, followed by the whistle of a blade cutting through the air. 5 years ago, I would have used my eyes to track his movement. Now I didn't need to. The rustle of his clothes told me he raised his right arm. His footsteps told me his weight was on his left leg. I sidestepped, the blade slicing past the tip of my nose. My cane struck out like a viper, hitting the ulnar nerve of his knife-wielding wrist with precision. Clang. The knife hit the floor. "You that blind guy?" the killer screamed in terror. He tried to back away, but slammed into the control console. "How could you find me? I'm wearing a thermal suit. The heat sensors can't see me. Thermal imaging can't see the human heart." I stepped closer, rain streaming down my sunglasses. "The sulfur smell on you. I could smell it from 3 miles away. and you just accelerated your heartbeat. Was watching the explosion that exciting for you? Go to hell. The killer pulled a backup dagger from his boot and lunged at me like a madman. I couldn't see his face, but I could see his fear. He was flailing in the dark, but I was the darkness. I slid to the side, dodging his charge. My left hand locked onto his throat with precision, while my right hand struck the back of his knee. Crack! The sound of knees shattering. The killer fell to his knees. I slammed him against the railing, half his body dangling 50 meters above the ground. Let go, you lunatic. I'm a suspect protected by law. He struggled desperately, but under my joint lock, he couldn't move an inch. Law. I leaned close to his face, smelling the nauseating mix of blood and medicated ointment for skin disease. Did the law protect my brothers who just got blown up? My fingers tightened. His eyes rolled back, his throat making choking sounds. With a little more force, I could crush his larynx or throw him off. Murderous intent boiled in my heart. Just then, chaotic footsteps and Elena's shout came from below. Caleb, stop! Beams of tactical lights hit the platform, stinging my eyes. Elena led her team up. She was covered in mud, looking wretched. When she saw the scene, she froze. Rain lightning. The blind man she usually treated as useless, who would burn himself cooking porridge, now looked like a demon of vengeance. He held the serial killer who terrified the whole city with one hand, ready to drop him into oblivion. Caleb, don't be impulsive. Give him to me. Elena Gasped, Giging. I tilted my head slightly toward her. Give him to you? I sneered. So Julian can let him escape again? Or trade him for promotion? No, I'll interrogate him personally this time. Caleb, you are a cop. You can't kill people. Elena shouted. Gulp. The word was like a needle popping the balloon of my rage. Right? I used to be a cop. I loosened my grip. Like tossing out trash, I threw the terrified killer at Elena's feet. Take him. I pulled a handkerchief from my pocket, slowly wiping the rain and the scum's touch from my hands. Dr. Reed's thermal imaging is broken, but my ears work fine. Facing Elena's shocked and complicated gaze, I said flatly, Elena, you owed me a life. Now we're even. Even the rain began to lighten. The killer was shoved into a police car. Paramedics brought a stretcher, wanting to check Caleb's injuries. Don't touch me. Caleb avoided the nurse's hand and picked up his cane. His left thumb was trembling slightly, but his face showed no pain. It was a look of complete numbness. Caleb. Elena chased after him, blocking his path. She looked at his bleeding wrist, her eyes red. Go to the hospital first. Your hand. Don't worry about it, Captain Vance. Caleb stepped around her. It's a work injury. I'll handle it myself. How long are you going to keep this up? Elena grabbed his sleeve on the verge of breakdown. I know we were wrong this time. Julian is finished. Internal Affairs will investigate him. You can come back. Really, Leo is waiting for you at home. Hearing Leo's name, Caleb paused, but only for a second. He pulled his sleeve from her grip, the movement resolute and chilling. Elena, do you still not understand? Caleb raised his head. Though he couldn't see, Elena felt he was looking down on her. For 5 years, I lived in your basement, cooked for you, cleaned for you. Even when you treated me like a dog, I didn't leave, because I felt I owed it to Leo's dad, and I thought you needed me. But today, when you chose to trust the snake who almost killed us and left me cuffed to a car to die, I understood. Caleb's lips curled into a mocking smile. In your heart, the blind Caleb died a long time ago. Since he's dead, bury him. Don't let his corpse walk around disgusting people. I quit. The key is on the table. My resignation letter is in the archives. Tell Leo that Uncle Caleb went far away to fix his eyes. With that, he turned and walked into the dark street. That thin figure wearing a dirty shirt, leaning on a cane, limping slightly, walked taller than he ever had. Caleb, Elena cried out behind him. Rain mixed with tears flowed into her mouth, suffocatingly bitter. She wanted to chase him, but her legs felt filled with lead. She knew that this time, no matter how she cried or begged, the man who always left a light on and a bowl of warm broth for her on stormy nights would never look back. At the end of the street, Caleb's figure melted into the night, leaving only the crisp tap of his cane fading away until it vanished. Shattered trust 3 days after Caleb left, the rain in Iron Bay finally stopped. The long-lost sun pierced the clouds, shining on the glass curtain wall of the police headquarters, but it couldn't shine into Elena's heart. The capture of the Raymond made headlines, but it was immediately overshadowed by a massive public opinion storm. A video was anonymously uploaded to the dark web and quickly went viral. It was footage from a SWAT officer's body camera. Although shaky, the key few minutes were crystal clear. In the footage, rain poured down. A blind man was forcibly handcuffed to a police car. Then came the explosion. Everyone scrambled, but the blind man, expressionless, snapped his own finger bone to break free, then charged alone toward the dark tower. No music, no commentary, just the suffocating sound of rain and the crisp crack of bone. Then came another grainy infrared surveillance clip. At the top of the tower, the blind man dodged knife strikes like a ghost, subdued the killer with one hand, and coldly threw him to the arriving police. The title was just 4 words: The Real Detective. The internet exploded. Oh my God, is that the legendary blind consultant Caleb Stone? People call him useless. I cried watching him break his finger without even frowning. How much injustice did he suffer to be that desperate? Where is that Dr. Reed, the influencer who only looks at data? Come out. Heard Caleb was forced out? Are the Iron Bay police blind? The precinct's phones were ringing off the hook. In the chief's office, Julian was being chewed out, suspended pending investigation. As the team captain, Elena kept her job, but her life was collapsing. Leaving Caleb, she found her world falling apart. Returning home, pushing open the door, she was greeted by suffocating silence. No dim light left on for her. No sound of soup simmering in the kitchen. The air smelled faintly of dust. Mom, when is Uncle Caleb coming back? Leo sat on the sofa, hugging the small wooden horse Caleb had carved for him, his eyes red from crying. The boy refused to eat and had lost weight. Soon. Elena repeated the lie mechanically, too guilty to look her son in the eye. She walked into the basement. She had cleaned it, trying to restore it to how it was when Caleb was there, but the emptiness couldn't be filled. On the table sat the unfinished wood carving and a notebook filled with Braille. Elena had never opened this notebook before. She couldn't read Braille and thought it was just Caleb's scribbles of self-pity. But today, driven by a ghost, she picked it up and took it to the station to find the old forensic pathologist, old Doc Higgins, who knew Braille. Old Doc Higgins, usually dozing in the archives, snorted when he saw Elena with the notebook. Oh, Captain Vance finally remembered this thing. His tone was clearly displeased. I thought it would rot in the trash. Doc, please, tell me what it says. Elena was humble. Higgins sighed, put on his reading glasses, and ran his fingers over the raised dots. These are reviews of the Black Hawk operation 5 years ago. Suspicions about Julian's resume. A psychological profile of Raymond. He deduced the killer was a chemical plant worker with skin disease half a month ago. Higgins stopped reading. What is it? Elena asked. The rest isn't case files. Higgins looked up at Elena with complex eyes. It's a diary. Read it. Elena's heart clenched. Date X. Elena came home late today. She smells of smoke, probably stressed about the case. I made red bean water for her edema. Unfortunately, she poured out, said it tasted bad. Actually, I didn't put sugar in it because her blood sugar has been high lately. Dati Grek. Julian is back. I know the mole back then might be related to him, but I have no proof. I'm blind now. If I expose him without evidence, it will only put Elena in danger. I have to endure, pretend to know nothing. Even if she despises me, as long as she is safe. Date Z. Leo said he wants to learn fighting. I secretly taught him some self-defense. I hope he won't be like me, unable to protect the people he wants to protect. Higgins' voice grew lower, and Elena's face grew paler. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She snatched the notebook, hugged it tight, squatted on the floor, and broke down sobbing. For 5 years, the man she saw as a burden had been guarding her in the humblest way, and she had trampled that heart into the dirt. Caleb, I was wrong. But the man who would have wiped her tears was gone. New beginning 3 months after leaving Elena's house. In the lower district, inside an old industrial building. The Mind's Eye Detective Agency opened for business. No expensive decor, just a few secondhand sofas and bookshelves packed to the brim. But business was surprisingly good. The poor who were turned away by the fancy uptown firms, small vendors with nowhere to go, even private investigators stuck on hard cases came here to try their luck. Legend had it the blind director could find the truth as long as you had money or a story. I wore a decent black suit, sitting in my office. Though I couldn't see, my hair was combed meticulously, and I had swapped my old sunglasses for a more refined pair. Boss, someone to see you. My assistant Stan knocked on the door. He was a retired veteran, a man of few words but efficient action. I don't see anyone without an appointment, I said, playing with a coin in my hand. She says, she's police. Stan hesitated, and she's been waiting outside for 3 hours. She's even helping us clean the windows. My fingers paused. The coin dropped onto the desk with a clear ring. The familiar scent had actually drifted in 3 hours ago. A mix of police leather, faint peppermint candy, and a trace of regret. Let her in. The door opened. Elena walked in. I didn't look at her, but I could feel her gaze burning on me. Caleb, her voice trembled. Compared to 3 months ago, it lacked the edge and held more caution. How have you been? Thanks to you, not bad. I took a sip of tea. If you're here to arrest me, show the warrant. If you're here to catch up, sorry, I'm busy. I'm not here to arrest you, Elena said urgently. I'm here to hire you. Oh, I raised an eyebrow. The majestic captain of a detective squad wants to hire a blind man? Can't the great Dr. Reed solve it? At the mention of Julian, Elena bit her lip. Julian is suspended. And there are some cases only you can solve. She placed a file gently on the desk. It's a copycat crime. The MO is identical to the Raymond, but more brutal. The chief specifically asked for your help. Caleb, this involves public safety. Please. I smelled the ink on the file and the cold sweat on Elena's palms. The queen who used to look down on me was now begging. A flash of vindictive pleasure passed through me, leaving only emptiness. I can take it. I stood up, adjusting my cuffs. But my fee is high, and I don't ride in police cars. They're too dirty. Elena stunned for a moment. Then her eyes lit up with surprise. No problem. The department will reimburse the fee. And the car. I'll drive my personal car to pick you up. Every day. I'll serve you like a king. Deal. I picked up my cane, the corner of my mouth lifting slightly. Let's go then, Driver Vance. Mist clears. The people at the precinct were stunned. The blind outcast kicked out of the archives had returned like a king. Elena really acted like a sidekick, opening doors for him, holding his cane, even picking fish bones out of his meal at the cafeteria before serving it to him. Caleb accepted it all with peace of mind. But he wasn't freeloading. In just 2 days, he identified the background noise in a recording left by the copycat, the specific clacking sound of chips from an underground casino, and locked onto the suspect. On the night of the arrest, Julian suddenly appeared at the station entrance. Though suspended, he used connections to try and steal credit and incidentally shut down Caleb's agency. Caleb Stone, you're operating illegally. I have the right to report you. Julian blocked Caleb and Elena, furious. Elena was about to explode, but Caleb stopped her with a hand. He pulled a USB drive from his pocket and threw it right into Julian's hypocritical face. This is evidence of your money laundering through overseas accounts for the last 3 months and audio backups of you selling intel for a green card 5 years ago. Caleb's voice wasn't loud, but it silenced the entire hall. Dr. Reed, I intended to let you dance for a few more days, but you're too loud. You're disturbing my hearing. Julian's face turned white instantly. His legs gave out, and he collapsed to the floor. Take him away. This time, Caleb gave the order, and the detectives instinctively obeyed, cuffing Julian immediately. Elena watched this scene, looking at the man standing under the lights, brilliant even behind sunglasses. Her heart was a mix of flavors. Pride that this was the man she loved. Sadness that the more brilliant he was, the more it highlighted how foolish and cruel she had been for 5 years. The current Caleb was like a polished black diamond, hard, dazzling, but also cold. Could she ever warm that heart again? What are you daydreaming about? Caleb's voice interrupted her thoughts. He was already at the car, tapping the window. Driver Vance, are we going? I want wontons from that old place on the south side. Remember, no cilantro. Elena snapped back, tears nearly falling again. That was Caleb's favorite late-night meal 5 years ago when they were together. Okay, coming. She ran over, opened the door, and started the engine. In that moment, she swore she would spend the rest of her life bringing back the Caleb who used to cook her porridge. The car drove into the night, neon lights streaming across the windows. Caleb leaned back in the passenger seat. Though he couldn't see, listening to Elena's light breathing beside him, a smile that wasn't so cold finally appeared on his face. Maybe the rain was finally stopping. The twist Julian was arrested, but the mess he left behind was trickier than I imagined. The evidence on the USB drive was enough to ruin him, but it also became the fuse for a final crisis. People like Julian are like rats in a sewer. Even if they die, they'll chew through a few wires first. In the interrogation room, Julian said nothing, a strange, unsettling smile hanging on his lips. No matter how Elena slammed the table, he remained mute. Caleb, the bastard won't talk. Elena came out, exhausted, handing me a bottle of ice water. But something feels wrong. His eyes. He's too sure of himself. I took the water, but didn't drink. My fingers rubbed the cold condensation on the bottle. He's waiting, I said flatly. Waiting for what? A lawyer? Bail. Waiting for his backup plan to kick in. I turned toward the one-way glass. I couldn't see, but I could smell the scent leaking from inside. Not fear, but the adrenaline of someone anticipating a good show. Ring, ring. Elena's phone rang. The second she answered, I heard her heart rate spike to 180. What did you say? Leo is missing. My hand tightened, crushing the plastic bottle with a crack. The kindergarten teacher was crying on the phone. Someone claiming to be a comrade of Leo's late father had picked him up. The paperwork looked perfect. Comrade, I sneered, standing up and slamming my cane on the floor. Besides me and Julian, all of Leo's dad's comrades were dead. Go to the interrogation room, I said darkly. Elena panicked, following me, utterly confused. Pushing open the door, Julian was leaning back, leisurely whistling. Seeing me enter, his smile widened. Oh, looks like our blind detective is finally anxious. Where is Leo? I walked to the table, not sitting, my tone calm as if asking about the weather. How would I know? Julian shrugged. I've been sitting right here. But I heard the abandoned chemical plant is due for demolition. There are some unprocessed waste tanks there. If someone accidentally pressed a switch. He leaned in, lowering his voice. Caleb, if high-concentration chlorine gas leaks, how long can a child last? 5 seconds? 10. You animal. Elena rushed forward, grabbing his collar and punching him in the face. Julian bled from the mouth, but laughed maniacally. Hit me. Kill me. The kid dies with me. As long as I don't talk, no one knows how to stop the device. Elena shook with rage, pulling her gun and pointing it at his head. Don't use the gun. I held Elena's hand down. Julian looked at me triumphantly. Old Caleb knows the rules. What, want to beg me? No. I took off my sunglasses, revealing my gray eyes, staring straight at him. I want to tell you there's a hole in your plan. What? Julian paused. You rely too much on data and control. You think that so-called comrade is loyal to you? You think only you can stop the device. I turned and walked out firmly. Elena, get the car. To the unfinished skyscraper in the city center. But he said the chemical plant. Elena chased after me. He's lying. I walked and talked. When he said chemical plant, his vocal cords didn't have the constriction of real nervousness. It was a rehearsed line. Also, I smell faint cement dust and high-altitude wind on him. That smell only exists above 200 meters. He scouted the spot yesterday. As for the person who took Leo, I stopped, a cruel smile touching my lips. I already sent Stan from the agency to say hello. Trust me, compared to prison, he'll be much more willing to tell me where Leo is. Rooftop, Dual City Center, the unfinished financial tower. The wind howled, whipping dust and city noise into a frenzy. This was the highest point in Iron Bay, the stage Julian had chosen for his final act. Leo was tied to a concrete pillar, gagged, a complex timing device strapped to him, connected to canisters marked with skull symbols. And Julian's accomplice, his driver, had already been neutralized downstairs by Stan. When Caleb and Elena rushed to the roof, the timer showed 5 minutes left. Don't move. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out from the shadows. Bang! A bullet whizzed past Caleb's ear, hitting the wall behind him. Julian had left a hired gun as a fail-safe. Caleb, watch out! Elena tackled Caleb to the ground. A second shot. This time, Elena grunted, a flower of blood blooming on her shoulder. Elena. Caleb heard the bullet hit flesh. In that instant, the ice around his heart cracked. I'm okay. 9 o'clock direction. Elena was pale, but managed to return fire. A shootout erupted on the roof. But the enemy had the high ground and Leo as a hostage. Elena couldn't get close. Time ticked away. 3 minutes left. Caleb lay on the ground, ear pressed to the rough concrete. He was listening to the wind, the electricity, the breathing of the gunman. Elena, shoot the breaker box. Caleb said suddenly. What? Cut the power to this floor. Make it dark. Elena understood instantly. In the light, there were targets. In the dark, Caleb was a god. Okay. Gritting her teeth against the pain, Elena fired 3 shots at the utility box. ZZT, sparks flew, and the emergency lights died. The rooftop plunged into pitch darkness, only the faint city glow outlining the edges. The gunman panicked. Who's there? Come out. He fired wildly, muzzle flashes blinking in the dark. Caleb stood up. He shed his suit jacket, gripping his cane and carving knife, blending into the night like a Black Panther. To the gunman, darkness was a terrifying abyss. To Caleb, it was an old friend. He heard the rapid heartbeat, the spring of the trigger, the drop of sweat falling. Left front, 10 meters, 3 o'clock. Caleb calculated the distance. He pushed off the ground, moving like a ghost. The gunman felt a breeze, then agonizing pain in his wrist. The gun flew. Before he could react, a cane struck his carotid artery. He collapsed without a sound. Caleb didn't pause. He rushed to Leo. MMPH. Leo struggled. Don't be scared. Uncle is here. Caleb felt the device. Cold metal. Tick, tick, tick. 58 seconds. It was a complex electronic mechanical lock with multiple wires. One wrong cut. Gas released. Caleb, I can't see clearly. Elena clutched her wound, vision blurring. Can you see which wire? I can't see. Caleb's voice was terrifyingly calm. He closed his eyes, pressing his ear to the casing. The world went quiet. He heard the faint click of gears, the hum of current through different wires. Red wire, high frequency, detonator. Blue wire, low frequency, timer. And a yellow wire. No current sound. Mechanical safety. Julian, that lunatic. He disguised the trigger as the safety. 10 seconds. Caleb's fingers pinched the yellow wire. His hand was steady, just like 5 years ago. Even blind, even betting his life. Leo, close your eyes. Snip. Caleb cut the yellow wire without hesitation. Beep. The heart-stopping countdown stopped at the last second. Silence. Then Leo wailed. Caleb let out a long breath, collapsing to the floor. He won. In the darkness, he had won back everything. Regaining light, the hospital. The smell of disinfectant hung in the air. When Elena woke up, it was 3 days later. Her vision was blurry. She couldn't focus on anything. The doctor said it was temporary optic nerve damage from the explosion shockwave and blood loss. Is anyone there? She reached out, panic-stricken. A warm, calloused hand grabbed hers. I'm here. Familiar voice. Caleb. Tears surged. Caleb, I can't see. Am I blind? Doctor says it's temporary. There was a smile in Caleb's voice. But even if you are blind, it doesn't matter. He picked up an apple, peeling it skillfully. The long peel hung down in a single strip. Caleb, I am sorry. Elena choked up. These 5 years. And this time, I owe you too much. I'm useless now, just like you were. Caleb sliced a piece of apple and put it in her mouth, stopping her words. Is it sweet? Elena nodded blankly. Good. Caleb reached out, wiping the tears from her eyes. Though he couldn't see, his touch was heartbreakingly precise. Elena, you are never useless. And you never owed me anything. Caleb's voice turned gentle. 5 years ago, I volunteered to stand in front of you. These 5 years, I stayed voluntarily. Because I knew the tough Captain Vance was actually more fragile than anyone and needed taking care of. Now it's fine. We're a pair of blind folks. Caleb smiled. A genuine smile of release Elena hadn't seen in years. From now on, I'm your eyes. You're my driver. Neither of us gets to complain. Elena laughed through her tears, gripping his hand tightly. Okay, whoever backs out is a coward. Epilogue I. Elena's monologue to sunset was beautiful, or at least Caleb thought so. He held the leash of the guide dog, wearing that peaceful smile I hadn't seen in forever. Leo chased butterflies on the grass nearby. I held Caleb's arm, feeling his muscles relax. He had finally let down his guard, like a bird battered by the storm, finally finding a safe harbor. Elena, he turned, his sunglasses reflecting my gentle face. I used to think the world was too loud, but now I think it's just right. I smiled, fixing his collar, my fingers brushing over his carotid artery. Just a little pressure, and I could stop the blood flow. But I didn't. I just caressed him gently. Yes, just right. I said softly, because as long as I'm here, you don't have to worry about anything. Caleb squeezed my hand, a gesture of total trust. Poor Caleb, the so-called legendary detective, the listener of the wind. In the end, he couldn't hear the mockery in my heartbeat. Caleb's biggest weakness was trusting his senses too much. He thought hearing a heartbeat or smelling hormones meant he understood the human heart. But he didn't know that in this world, some hearts are rusted machines and some blood runs cold. Like mine. 5 years ago, during Operation Black Hawk, everyone thought Julian sold the intel for a green card. True, Julian sold it, but I was the one who fed him that intel through casual conversation. Julian, that greedy idiot, was the perfect scapegoat. And that bomb, Caleb always thought it was bad luck or not enough time. No, I was there. My radio wasn't broken. I heard his call, but I delayed the retreat order by 3 seconds. Just 3 seconds. Enough to kill the annoying, overly righteous deputy, and enough to blind Caleb's dangerously sharp eyes. I love Caleb. Truly, I admired his talent. His deduction was art, but he was too uncontrollable. The old him looked through me, seeing my darkest corners. That made me unsafe. Only a blind Caleb is a perfect Caleb. 4 or 5 years, I locked him in the basement, humiliated him, suppressed him. Not because I hated him, but to break him, to tame the hawk, to make him believe he was useless, abandoned by the world. Only then, when I extended a hand at the very end, would he rely on me completely, like he does now. When Julian came back, I was actually happy. My cleaning plan was in full swing. Iron Bay was too dirty. I needed to wipe out the scum. The Raymond? Just a lunatic I guided on the dark web. I needed chaos to cover up the disposal of informants who knew too much. But Julian tried to use Caleb as a pawn. That wouldn't do. Caleb is my property, my masterpiece. Only I can destroy him. So at the docks, when Caleb screamed about the bomb in Zone B, I charged in on purpose. If I didn't get hurt, how could I play the victim? If a few loudmouthed officers didn't die, how could I ensure the team's loyalty? As for the tower, Caleb thought the killer was scared stiff. No, the killer saw me rush the platform and recognized me, Mr. K, his sponsor. He wanted to talk. I didn't let him. When Caleb handed him to me, I pressed his vagus nerve while cuffing him. He didn't faint from fear. I knocked him out. Later, he committed suicide in the car. By my hand. Mom, I'm hungry. Leo ran back. He looked so much like his dead father, especially those stupidly righteous eyes. Okay, let's go home. I took Leo's hand, holding Caleb with the other. On the way, Caleb sniffed. Elena, new perfume? My heart skipped, but I kept my face still. No, what? Nothing. Caleb frowned. Maybe I smelled wrong. A faint bitter almond scent. Maybe wildflowers. I smiled. Not wildflowers. That was the cyanide powder I got on me when visiting Julian's lawyer earlier, to make sure Julian stayed quiet in prison. Even though I cleaned up, Caleb's nose is still so sharp, so cute, and so dangerous. That's why I put a specific sedative in his milk every day, mixed with high-dose vitamins. It dulls the nerves slowly and makes him blind to the sin hormones I secrete. He thinks he's drinking love. He's drinking cage. Late at night, Caleb was asleep. I sat by the bed, looking at his handsome face. I touched the scar by his eye. Caleb, I whispered. You know, Julian didn't lie on that rooftop. The gas device. Only Julian knew how to stop it. The yellow wire Caleb cut wasn't a mechanical safety. It was the detonator. But before I ran up the stairs, I had already locked the trigger program remotely. That life and death race was just a stage I built for you. To give you back your confidence. To make you feel like you saved the world. And save me. You see, you beat Julian, the killer, in public opinion. But you lost to me. Caleb turned over, mumbling, Elena. I'm here. I kissed his lips. Sleep, my detective. In this Truman Show built for you. Just be a happy blind man. I will manufacture and control the darkness you can't see. Because I am your eyes. Forever. Epilogue 2. The mind's eye of the night was deep. Elena was sound asleep. Her breathing was even and long, 16 breaths per minute. Deep sleep. I lay beside her, slowly opening my gray, lightless eyes. Though I couldn't see, I could pinpoint the rhythm of her carotid artery. I got up quietly, moving like a cat. Walking to the plant by the window, I spat out the wet cotton ball I had hidden under my tongue. It was soaked with the calming milk she gave me. Benzodiazepines mixed with trace scopolamine. Long-term use degrades memory and will, turning a man into an obedient puppet. Thanks for the treat, Captain. I poured the rest of the milk into the soil. The roots of the Monstera plant were already rotting black. Just like this perfect marriage. Elena really thought the bomb 5 years ago only took my eyes. No. In the 3 seconds before the blast, the radio wasn't broken. My hearing is hypersensitive. I didn't just hear static. I heard the faint click of a lighter. She was lighting a cigarette. In that moment of life and death, she didn't order a retreat. She lit a cigarette and watched the monitor. Waiting for me and the deputy to be blown away. I realized then, the mole wasn't Julian. Julian was a puppet. The real player was Elena, the woman who commanded our absolute trust. But I couldn't speak. A blind, crippled man accusing a hero? I'd die in a psych ward. So I chose to hibernate. For 5 years, I lived in her basement. She thought she was taming me. She didn't know it was the perfect observation post. The ventilation ducts carried sound perfectly. Every night, when she thought I was asleep, I stood under the vent, recording her. I heard her voice changer on the dark web. I heard her last calls with the informants she purged. I heard how she guided Julian to destruction. She thought I was a bird in a cage. I was a snake in her bed. My incompetence, my burns, all an act to lower her guard. Elena is too paranoid. Only by becoming total trash would she reveal her darkness to me. As for leaving home and the return of the detective, a script I wrote. I knew Julian's return would break the balance. I knew Elena would use him to clean house. So I entered the game. On the rooftop, when I cut the yellow wire, Elena thought I was gambling my life. Actually, I smelled it. The ozone smell of a burnt circuit board. The device had been remotely locked minutes before I got there. Only Elena could do that. So I cut it without hesitation. I needed her to see that scene. A hero risking death for a child. A fool trusting her completely. Only then would she drop the butcher knife and switch to the pleasure of nurturing. Like tonight, I smelled the bitter almond on her. Cyanide. The lawyer she visited is likely dead. She cleaned up well, but she forgot the wind direction, and she underestimated my nose. She thought I lied about the wildflowers. Actually, I was giving her a final ultimatum. I walked to the desk and pried a small SD card from the base of the unfinished wood carving. My braille notes were an index of evidence, and every time I tapped my cane, the recorder in the tip was working. Her sleep talk, her heartbeat while pouring the poisoned milk, the chemical residue on her clothes. The puzzle was complete. MH. Elena turned, reaching for me in her sleep. I returned to bed quickly, adjusting my breathing and heart rate to match what she expected. She touched me, sighed contentedly, and buried her head in my chest. Caleb, she mumbled. Is talks here, Nick, fingers gliding over her Vadapa. Such a fragile neck. One twist. No, that's too easy. I don't want her life. I want justice. I will rip off her mask in front of the whole city. I will let her fall into hell at her happiest, most triumphant moment. Sleep, Elena, I whispered, my voice as gentle as a perfect lover. I'm here. I'm watching everything for you. Watching you step, inch by inch, into the gallows I built. This is the true mind's eye. Epilogue 3. The eternal stage. My name is Leo. After the police academy graduation ceremony, I didn't go to celebrate. I drove to a private sanatorium on the outskirts. It wasn't open to the public. It was more a luxury prison than a hospital. I swiped my card, passed layers of security, and reached the top floor room. The walls were padded. A woman curled in the corner, holding a broken wooden horse, muttering neurotically, Caleb, I was wrong. Don't make me drink that. Don't. That was my adoptive mother, Elena Vance. On the other side of the massive one-way glass sat a man. He wore a fine handmade suit, swirling a glass of red wine. His sunglasses sat on the table. Those gray-white eyes, though blind, were aimed precisely at the woman behind the glass. Caleb Stone. Leo's here. Caleb didn't turn, didn't rise. The uniform fits. Your steps sound strong. Good. Uncle Caleb. I looked at Elena in the glass, a chill running down my spine. Is she still the same? Yeah. Caleb sipped his wine, a faint smile on his lips. Doctor says it's withdrawal combined with severe mental breakdown. She sleeps 2 hours a day. The rest is hallucinations. What hallucinations? She thinks I'm watching her from some corner, poisoning her food, putting gas in her air. Caleb's voice was gentle enough to make one shudder, just like she did to me 10 years ago. Caleb didn't hand Elena over for the death penalty. He used the blackmail material on the SD card to make a deal. Death is too easy, he had said. That night, he whispered to a handcuffed Elena. Elena, you like control? You like the cage bird game? For the rest of your life, I'll keep you. She was declared insane, and Caleb became her guardian. He bought this place. She's the only patient. Uncle, do we have to keep doing this? I asked. It's been 10 years. She doesn't even recognize people. It's better if she doesn't. Caleb walked to the glass, placing his hand against the cold surface. Inside, Elena seemed to sense something. She screamed, shrinking away as if a demon stood there. Leo, do you know what the true mind's eye is? What? It's making her live in fear, in the nightmare I built, never waking up. Caleb turned to me. She made me think I was trash, made me despair of the world. Now, I'm just returning the gift with interest. He handed me a small pill bottle. Vitamins, mixed with the same chronic hallucinogen she used on him. Go. Time for her medicine. I looked at the bottle. Go. Caleb's voice was warm, but commanding. You're a cop. You have to face sin. Some sins the law can't punish. You have to use magic to defeat magic. I entered the room. Elena saw me and grabbed my pant leg like a lifeline. Now, save mommy. Caleb wants to kill me. He's poisoning the milk. He's watching me. He's watching me. She pointed at the one-way glass, screaming. Even though she couldn't see out, I felt she really saw him. Saw those cold, gray eyes watching her like an ant. Mom, time for medicine. I put the pill in her mouth. Elena struggled. Then her eyes went unfocused. She slumped, drooling, smiling idiotically. Caleb, so tasty. More. I walked out. Caleb had put on his sunglasses, leading the old guide dog toward the exit. Uncle, where are you going? Home, Caleb said flatly. There's a new case tonight. I want to listen to the recording. Oh, have a dose tomorrow. Let her be lucid longer. It's no fun if she's silly all the time. Yes, I watched his back. The sunset stretched his shadow long and thin. The tap, tap, tap of the cane echoed in the empty corridor. In that moment, I understood. There are no winners in this story. Elena is mad, locked in a visible cage. Caleb is awake, but locked himself in an invisible cage of hatred. Neither let the other go. This is the ending. Not sunshine after the rain, but the coming of eternal night. Story complete, story complete.